All right, hi everyone. Today what we're going to do is we're going to solve quadratic formulas, quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So how do we solve quadratic formulas, quadratic equations before? If I give you x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals to 0, one of the fastest ways we said was by factoring. And if I could factor this, x and x, two numbers that multiply to be 8 is 4 and 2, and 4 times 2 is 8, but 4 plus 2 is 6. Great, we said if I could think of a number, a combo, I could factor it. And now once we factored it, we can say, well, when does x plus 4 go to 0? And when does x plus 2 go to 0? And well, that's when x is negative 4 and x is negative 2. We could also have done completing the square. X squared plus 6x plus 8 is equal to 0. We would complete the square by x plus, divide the middle by 2, plus 9 minus 9, and then we negative 1. Okay, and now we would get rid of the 1, get rid of the squared, and then get rid of the 3, like we practiced in our last class. X equals to 1 square root plus and minus negative 3. And then, so x equals to negative 3, that's a 3, plus and minus 1, two versions, negative 3 plus 1, negative 3 minus 1 is negative 2 and negative 4. All right, so we solve this in two different ways. One is completing the square. Come on, whatever. The square. And one is factoring. Now, both these methods take a lot of skill, okay? The first one, factoring, you have to be able to guess those numbers, think about the numbers that make the combination. The second is only easy, it's only fast, it's only easy if the front number was a 1 and if the middle number was even. Because if it was odd, we would always end up with a stupid fraction, okay? So both these methods are doable, but there's like gimmicks to them. One is easier because you can think of a number that works, and one is easier if it's an even and the number in the front is level and problem. But what if it wasn't as simple? We have something called the quadratic formula to help us with that. And the quadratic formula here, it's what I like to call the hammer. We can use it every single time to solve for any x squared equation. Any x squared you want to go to 0, we can solve it. Now let's talk about the setup for the quadratic formula. We need it to be set up in this manner. A x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now what I mean is we need a x squared, an x, and a constant value all separate here. And also, most importantly, this has to equal to 0. This problem only works when we're making equal to 0. Now, if you have this format where all the x squares, x's, and constants are on one side and zeros on the other, you can do the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is this. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And you've seen that over and over and over to yourself. And you practice this 3-4 times, okay? If you practice 3-4 times, you'll be okay for about a day or two. You practice 4-5 more times, and then you'll be okay for a week. And you can practice like 10 times, you'll be okay for like at least through the summer, I hope. Okay. Now, all we're doing now is copying our B, copying our A, and copying our A over. So we're just plugging in all these numbers, and if we can set it up in this form, we can automatically solve it. It does all the work for us, all the work. I mean, we're still doing math, but it's going to take care of it. There is no factoring. There is no steps here completing the square. It's just plug it in and crank it out. Now, using our example here, x squared plus 6x plus 8 is equal to 0. I want us to figure out what my a, b, and c values are. So I'm going to write a in front of the x squared. I'm going to write b in front of, on the bottom of the x. I'm going to write c by itself. Now, what is the number in front for my x squared? Okay, what's up here? Is there any number in front? And when there's nothing in front, we say it's an invisible what? What's my b value? What's in front of the x? And what's my c value? What number is by itself? That's going to be 1, 6, and 8. Okay, so all we're doing is we're taking the numbers in front of the x squared, the number in front of the x, and the number without any friends at all, the number without an x. Once we have this, we can then plug in our 6, our 1, our 8, and our 1. We're going to plug in all these numbers in there. We're going to beam them in, transport them into place. So here is the next thing I do. I sing the song, except I'm going to, instead of writing A, B, and C, I'm going to just write them as parentheses. X equals to negative B. I'll fill that out later. Plus and minus square root of B squared. I'll fill that out later. Minus 4AC all over 2A. And I write the parentheses because I don't have to keep going back and looking at the letters. I just write it because I'm setting it up. And now I can go back and say, hey, X equals to negative B. B is 6. Plus the minus square root of B squared, which is 6. Minus 4AC, A and C all over 2A. Please take a look here. After I've finished setting it up, I then go back and I fill in the numbers. I go ahead and fill in those numbers. Now, how hard is it to fill in numbers? Not really. Once I have them all separate, A, B, and C, plugging it in is not that difficult. Now, the next part is we're going to go ahead and multiply like terms and add like terms and get rid of all these parentheses, okay? So what is X equals to negative times a positive is a negative 6, plus and minus the square root of 6 squared. What's 6 squared? That's 6 times 6 is 36. What is 4 times 1 times 8? 4 times 1 is 4, times 8 is 32. It's going to be negative 32. Now, here's a big deal. A lot of kids always forget about this negative sign. So make sure you do catch this negative sign here. Negative 4 times 1 times 8 is going to still be negative. Oftentimes, I'll just multiply the numbers out and I'll worry about the signs afterwards. All over 2 times 1. All over 2 times 1 is... all over 2 times 1 is 2. We continue with negative 6 plus and minus. Now, what's inside the square root? 36 minus 32 is 4 all over 2. We're almost there now. Negative 6 plus and minus the square root of 4. What's square root of 4? That's 2 all over 2. Man, this quadratic form is a lot of writing. No, it is a lot of writing. But it's all just take that next step. Take that next step. There's no real thinking involved. What I mean by thinking is like, you're not trying to guess anything. Negative 6 plus 2 over 2. Negative 6 minus 2 over 2. Remember, whenever we have plus minus, we write two different versions. So since I have a plus minus here, I have a positive version up here and a negative version on the bottom. That becomes negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4 over 2 is negative 2. And negative 8 over 2 is negative 4. And guess what? It's the same answers we got before, negative 2 and negative 4, but with a lot more work. Oh my goodness. The quadratic formula is a lot of writing. But guess what? It works. It works for all types of problems. Gosh, that was a lot of writing, wasn't it? Now, can I teach you guys a shortcut? I'm going to give you a shortcut. And you know what? I'll give you the shortcut on our next problem. I'll give you the next shortcut on our next problem because we should move on to another example. So let's do another example. What if it was x squared minus 7x minus 8 equals to 0? Okay. The numbers become a little bit bigger. And we could factor this. Yeah, we could probably factor this. What numbers multiplied to become 8? That's subtract that to become 7. 1, 8, 2, 4. Well, 1 and 8, right? Okay, so we could factor this. I wish I could factor it. I should have factored it. But because we're practicing the quadratic formula, let's go ahead and set up our A, B, and C. I'm going to give you guys a second there to go ahead and fill out what your A, B, and C value is. A is in front of x squared. B is, of course, it's an order, A, B, C's, okay? Now make sure you also took the negative signs. This is invisible 1, negative 7, and negative 8. Make sure if you didn't do that, go back and double check them. That's one of the biggest mistakes that kids do. They forget the negative signs. So we want to try to find what x values will make this go to, do you know what x values will make this go to 0? I don't. So let's go and do the quadratic formula. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Oh, repeat that song over and over and over. Now, because I have the format, I wrote it out with all a bunch of blanks. I can now go back and fill in what these are. Negative b, sorry, not negative b. X equals negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac. A and c, that's a negative, all over 2a. Now, I'm going to give you guys a trick here. We are going to do, we're going to save time. And we're going to save time by writing this over here. What is negative 7 squared? That's going to be 49. And what is 4 times 1 times 8? 4 times 1 is 4, and then 4 times 8 total, because 4 times 1 is 4, and then take that number 4 times 8 is 32. And what's a negative times a negative? Negative times negative is a positive 32. Now, what is 49 plus 32? That's going to be 81. Now, why am I doing this math on the side? If you remember, I wrote it once, twice, right? I wasted a little bit of time rewriting the numbers over and over again, but I'm going to show you guys we can do quadratic formula in less steps because I want to save time. I'm just a guy that likes to save time. X equals 2. Let's go ahead and see if we saved any time at all. What is negative times negative? That's a positive 7. Plus and minus the square root of 81 all over 2 times 1 is 2. We skipped one full step. By us writing our notations on top, we skipped that one full step. We could actually skip another one if you wanted, because do you know what the square root of 81 is? Isn't the square root of 81 9? We could have just went and just wrote 9 instead. If we could take the square root, save yourself a little bit more time. Now we have two possibilities now. 7 plus 9 over 2 is 16 over 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And 7 minus 9 over 2 is negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. And it turns out these are my two answers. X can be 8 or it could be negative 1, and that would lead our problem to be 0. You don't believe me? Well, let's go ahead and practice and check it right now. If I said X equals to 8, okay? So it's going to be 8 squared minus 7 times 8 minus 8. Is that going to be 0? That's 64 minus 42, 56. I don't know why I wrote that. 56 minus 8. So 64 minus 64, that is 0. We found the zeros using the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is using these steps. Now, on your test and on your work, I need you guys to practice writing this all out. If you skip a step, I need to see where you did the math. If you see me here, I actually did skip my step over here in this corner. So if I don't see you write that math out work, if I don't see you write out the work out, I can't give you credit for it. A lot of people use solvers to solve this. Sure, you can copy this onto a computer, but it doesn't teach you how to do it, and you're gonna be really stuck for geometry and algebra too. So let's make sure we learn it now. It's only gonna take you like about 5 minutes. Okay, so here we go. Let's try another problem. Now, the next problem we're gonna do is not gonna be a nice square root. Okay, it's not gonna be a nice square root. So let's go ahead and try it. We 9x squared minus 5x minus 9 is equal to 0. Now this problem is not gonna be a nice square root. So I want you guys to make sure you guys have your calculators out so we can find the decimal answer to this. Let's fill out our A, our B's, and our C's. Now, I could try factoring this. This doesn't look like it will be factorable. So that's why the quadratic form was super important to us, because we took problems that we thought would be easy, but it turns out we couldn't factor it, so we can't, and I don't want to do completing the square, and that 9 to 5 is going to be some weird fraction. So quadratic formula is a good backup plan. Sometimes it's a good go-to plan. So let's think it. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now that I sang the bloody song, we can plug in our A, B's, and C's. Oh, sorry, that's in the regular line. Now, I want to save time, so I'm going to actually do all this math inside the box. I'm going to highlight that so you guys can see it. I'm going to do all this on the side so I don't have to rewrite it. 5 times negative 5 is 25. And 4 times 9 times 9, that's actually going to be a big number. but 9 times 9 is 81. 81 times 4 is 32, 4. 32, 4. And negative is positive. Please take a look here. We do have two negative signs here. So what's a negative times a negative? That's a positive, and that's a simple mistake kids always forget. They always forget that negative sign. I think that's 81 times 4 is 3, yeah. Okay, and we're going to combine those together. We have 324 plus 25 is 349. I do not know what the square root of 349 is, but it's okay. X equals to 5 plus and minus the square root of 349 over 18. Now, I don't know what the square root of 349. So this is where we take our calculator out. Okay, we're going to do 5 plus the square root of 349 over 18, and 5 minus square root of 349 over 18. Okay, so let me demonstrate on the calculator how we're going to do this on my cheap calculator here. I'm going to say 5 plus 349 square root. See my little square root symbol here? Equals, and then we're going to take that number and divide that by 18. My first answer is x equals to 1.3, rounding up, 1.32. My next answer, 5 minus, okay, 349 square root equals, mix up the top first, then divide that by 18, gives us negative 0.76. And that's the answer that you're going to type into iExcel today, okay, when you guys do the homework problems. What if the problem itself isn't set up where A, B's, and C's are obvious? Okay, what if it's not set up where A, B's, and C's are obvious? What if I wrote the problem as 3x squared minus 3x equals to 8? Does this follow ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0? And hopefully you see that it doesn't follow it. Well, if it doesn't follow it, how can I change 3x squared minus 3x plus 8 so that it looks like our a, b, and c function here? Well, we just have to move the 8 over. What's the opposite of plus 8? If I minus 8 to both sides, isn't 8 minus 8 0? That's what we want to do. X squared minus 3x minus 8 is equal to 0. Now we have everything on one side. If there's more than one thing not on the right side, hey, move it over, move everything over. So our A value is now 3. Our B value is, what type of 3 is that? Positive or negative? Take a look. Don't get caught. That's a negative. And what type of C is that? That is a negative 8. And then we're going to do quadratic formula. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We take our time to plug it in. Make sure you don't forget your negatives. Negative 3, negative 3, 3, negative 8, and 2a, which is 3. Does anyone have a problem of me picking these numbers and choosing which letters go, which numbers go in which letters? X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so I'm just copying the numbers. All right, so on the side here, I'm going to do my math. Negative 3 squared is, negative times negative is positive. 3 times 3 is 9. Minus 4ac, negative is positive. 4 times 3 is 12. And 12 times 8 is 96. So plus 96. This adds up to be 105. I don't know the square root of 105. So let's go ahead and figure that out. Negative times negative in the front is positive 3. Plus and minus the square root of 105 all over 2a. 2 times 3 is 6. Now we just have to plug this in the calculator, giving us our two versions. 3 positive plus square root of 105 over 6, and 3 minus square root of 105 over 6. We have two versions there, right? Okay, so 3 plus 105 square root equals, divide that by 6, is 2.207. And 3 minus 105 square root is equal to, and then we're going to divide this by 6 again, and we have negative 1.207. Okay. Now make sure you do read the question. The question is asking me to round to nearest 10, sorry, nearest hundreds. So this would actually be wrong. So I need to put 2.21 rounding up and negative 1.21 rounding up again. Okay, so make sure you do read in case you just put in the wrong decimal. You know how IXL is super finicky? Okay, we have enough time to do, let's do one more problem and see where that takes us, okay? Our next problem is going to be 8p, no, that's not 2p, that's 8x squared is equal to 7x plus 3, okay? Now this problem, is this a quadratic problem? Okay? This is a quadratic equation. Well, there's an equal, and the quadratic refers to if it's x squared. Do you guys see the x squared here? So unfortunately, we have to use either factoring, completing the square, or the quadratic formula. And in this case, since it looks kind of ugly, or if I'm unsure if I can find an answer, quadratic formula is a great place to go. So let's go ahead and do quadratic formula here. Now, quadratic formula, remember, it has to be ax squared plus bx plus c, ABCs, and then it has to be equal to 0. And this isn't equal to 0. So it's up to you. We can either move the 7x and the 3 over, or we can move the 8 over. It's really up to you. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. Okay, as long as we make one side go to 0. I'm going to go ahead and keep the 8 as a positive. So we're going to say 8x squared minus 7x minus 3 is equal to 0. Now, how would I do that? I minus 7x and I minus 3 to both sides. Now that we have our standard form here, we can write a is equal to 8, b is equal to negative 7, c is equal to negative 7. Careful that you weren't tricked by those negative signs. X equals to negative b plus and minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and plug in those numbers. X equals to negative b, which is negative 7, plus the minus square root of b squared, which is negative 7 again, minus 4ac all over 2a. Right. So this looks pretty crazy, but I'm gonna again remember, take some time, just do the inside of the square root on the side. Negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. 4 times 8 is 32. 32 times 3 is 90, 102. I think so. Is it? No. Was it 32 times 3? Yeah, that's, oops, I messed up. 32 times 3 is not 102. It's 96. I don't know why I thought that. 96. Mr. Code, come on. 32 times 3, yeah. These are both positives. We can add them to become 145. Yeah, 145. All right, so let's go ahead and rewrite this. X equals to negative is positive 7, plus and minus the square root of 145, all over 16. All right, now we have, I would say you guys have to write out the 2 separate parts. I want to see you guys writing it out. And 7 minus square root of 145 over 16. Make sure you do write the fraction out. And then I'm going to use my calculator again. 7 plus 145 square root equals, divided by 16, is 1.19. And 7 minus 145 square root equals, divide this by 16, is negative 0.31, rounding up to 0.32. Okay, so I think the best thing for you guys to do now is go ahead and work on the IXL. This is our last homework. And this is our last lesson for the year. Great job for making it through Algebra 1. Now you just got to practice for the last test.